If you think you need a $5,000 camera for high-resolution landscape shots, think again. Discover how I turned my entry-level Nikon D3400 into a panorama powerhouse producing images over 120 megapixels. Watch the video to learn the simple process behind creating stunning large format landscape photos with any entry-level camera. No expensive gear required. The Sony a7R V has no doubt set the bar in so many aspects in the full frame category. It is 16 megapixels higher than the leading competitors, and 16 megapixels is already a fairly decent resolution on its own. In fact, Nikon's flagship cameras back in 2016 were only 16 megapixels, and it wasn't even that long ago. I wish I had the a7R V. Then I can use it in my landscape photography and print my photos into large posters for my viewing pleasure. You see, landscape photographs can only be fully appreciated if they are printed in a large format. We won't be able to enjoy the stunning details of our landscape shots if we're only viewing it on our computer screens, and worse, if we're viewing it on our phones. But we can only print them in good quality if they have high enough resolution. But my dream camera is way beyond my budget. So how do we get a high resolution image from a lower resolution camera? I have here my old Nikon D3400, and using this I can create a landscape photograph with a total resolution far surpassing the a7R V's 61 megapixels. I know it's a bold statement when I only have a mediocre DSLR in my hand, but to understand why a high-resolution camera like the Sony a7R V is not necessary to take high-resolution landscape shots, first we have to understand how a panorama is created. By definition, a panorama is a horizontally extended visual representation providing a wide view of a landscape or other scene. And I am not aware of a digital camera in the consumer market today that can take that wide of an aspect ratio. So in photography, you have to shoot your landscape using a wide angle lens to get the width of the scene you want. Then crop the 3x2 into a 2x1 or a 3x1 depending on the aspect ratio needed for our panorama. 3x2, by the way, is the most common aspect ratio in today's camera sensors. So assuming we shot our landscape with a 60 megapixel camera, we are only left with 3/4 or half of the resolution after cropping it to 2x1 or 3x1, leaving us with 45 or 30 megapixels. So if we shot it with a 30 megapixel camera, we are left with only 15 megapixels after cropping to 3x1. And besides, it is a lazy way of creating a panorama. It's how everyday people take panoramic photos. One push of a button and then crop. Where's the fun in that? Nowadays, we actually have dedicated panorama cameras using state-of-the-art technology. They are found in security systems, in vehicles, and other applications requiring a wide-angle view. They usually have a special fisheye lens that captures an elliptical image or an array of tiny cameras working together to produce the panoramic picture. We also have our smartphones, which rely on software to create panoramas. But these are all tiny cameras with tiny sensors. These cameras cannot produce an image that can be printed in large format and still preserve the fine details. Using the standard digital cameras today, whether mirrorless or DSLR, The best way of creating panoramas is by joining a series of shots taken from a fixed point, pivoted horizontally. This way, we don't need a super high resolution camera to do the job. This APS-C or crop sensor camera can take 24 megapixels, and to fully take advantage of the sensor width, we shoot sideways and take a series of overlapping shots to create our panorama. If I shoot a total of 9 frames, overlapping them by 50%, that would leave us a total remaining area of 5 frames, which, when multiplied by 24 megapixels, is a whopping 120 megapixels. The process is very simple, but we have to consider a few things when creating a panorama. First, we have to overlap the images at least 30%, but I say 50% is better. This will allow Lightroom or whatever software we use to have enough data to match between shots or frames, making the photos easier to merge. This means you have to be particularly aware of where your first frame is in the scene and where your next frame is going to be, and so on. Next is a tripod. You see me use a tripod. It's great having a tripod, but not necessary. I took these photos handheld, sitting on the roof of my van, and stitched them together in Lightroom with no issues. But if you have shakier hands than mine, or you are very meticulous about tiny distortions when stitching panoramas, which are barely noticeable by the way, get a proper tripod. Pick something with a pivoting head and a leveling device attached to it. This allows you to get perfectly aligned shots for stitching. Lastly, we want to pick the right lens for the job. The overall composition of our panorama will determine the focal length that we need, so it would be practical to have a zoom lens. I took these shots at 50mm using a Sigma 17 to 50mm f2.8 on a Nikon D5300. This setup is equivalent to a 24-70 on full-frame cameras. Looking at these shots now, I could have used a longer focal length for tighter shots, because I still ended up cropping the sky and the foreground after stitching the photos together. With tighter shots, I wouldn't have to crop, which give us even more resolution. My crop sensor gear is light enough, allowing me to bring along a 50 to 150mm f2.8 in case I need tighter shots. The focal length on this lens is equivalent to 70 to 200mm on full-frame cameras. This is the one I use to shoot basketball games in a gym, and I never thought I would need it for my landscape photography. I was wrong. Photography is an art, so there is no right or wrong here. There are only suggestions and recommendations based on experience. If you're happy with your work, keep doing it the way you're doing it, and you will develop your own style. Don't listen to anyone telling you to do otherwise. Keep in mind that it is your own style of photography. We have come to the end of this video, but before you go, I want to ask you to please click that like button. It means a lot to me. And if you found value in this content, please share it with friends and people you know who are also into landscape photography. If you haven't already, please subscribe. That would really help me continue to create content like this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.